NetsBoy, so let's hear what he has to say. His name is NetsBoy, he thinks the world is all over when the Nets just can't play. What up, Net fans? NetsBoy here, bring your latest in your Brooklyn Nets news. All right, let's go. We've got tons to talk about in this NetsBoy episode. Tons to go over because it's been over a week and a half since my last NetsBoy episode. I wanted to do an episode, earlier, but like always, my life got in the way and I was very busy and I just couldn't find the time to squeeze it in. So here I am now trying to get an episode in before the next Nets game and a lot to talk about. So like I said, so let's dive right in. The Nets, since my last episode, went 3-3 the last 6 games. There's really almost a talking point for every single game, but I'm really not going to spend a lot of time talking about the Bulls game or the, even though that was a disappointing loss, or the Timberwolves game because that was a great win. Those games to me really just, there's just not a lot to talk about in them. But the other games, the other 4 games, there's stuff I want to kind of touch upon with all of them. As well as obviously we got to talk about, the sad news about LaMarcus Aldridge and what is happening with his health and the fact that he has now entered retirement. We're going to obviously talk about that. We're going to discuss the Nets signing Alize Johnson for the rest of the year and a non-guaranteed contract. And then we're going to just kind of talk about what we think are going to happen with this Nets team moving forward, especially without LaMarcus Aldridge. So let's go. Let's dive right in. Let's first start off with the fun Battle of New York game between the Nets and the Knicks. Like I said, Bulls game, whatever. They lost. Disappointing loss. Bulls are a borderline playoff team, whatever. The Knicks, going into this game, were unbelievably arrogantly cocky and thought that, obviously, look, the Knicks players themselves have a lot of confidence. And I get it. They should. They're playing well this year. But let me just say something, because we all heard the quote. Obviously, I'm talking about what Reggie Bullock and Julius Randle said when talking about the Nets' big 3. And they said, "Oh, we got a big 5." No, actually, like a big 15. Look, it's one thing to have confidence. It's one thing to believe in you and your players and your team. But to have the audacity and the arrogance and the hubris to say something like that to a team that's clearly more superior than you, that clearly has more higher expectations than this one game. Like, for the Knicks, that is probably the biggest regular season game they're going to have, and the Knicks should absolutely be making the playoffs. They're a playoff team. But other than that, this is like a game that they're going to circle on their calendar. For the Nets, it's just another tune-up before they get to the postseason. So the Nets really don't care as much. So I get that. But Randle and Bullock, remember something. You're a 500 team. How could you go out there and pound your chest and saying, we're a big 15, you're just a big 3? How the hell are the Nets just a big 3? Come on. If anything, it's the other way around. And the game itself was very entertaining, back and forth, hard-fought game. Both teams played, pretty well. But it was just Kyrie Irving and the guys because there was still no Harden. Durant was not back yet. And, it was a close, hard-fought game. Kyrie put on a show. At the end, Randle missed the tying shot. And the Nets won by 2. Knicks lost. And, look, I will say this. Bullock and Randle, they backed up their trash talk. Bullock had, 23 points. He was, 7 of 10 from 3 and just was lighting it up. And Julius Randle had a triple-double. But I guess to quote my brother, who he said this to me and I actually laughed, so I'm going to say it. I guess at the end of the day, the Knicks' big 15 just wasn't good enough to beat the Nets' big 1 of Kyrie Irving, who, by the way, is considered to be the third person of the big 3. But let's continue to talk a lot of smack and trash talk Knicks and Knicks players and Knicks fans because, your cute little 500 team is going to become like the 7th seed and be maybe the 6th seed. They should be the 6th seed. I think they should be the 6th seed, the Knicks. I think they're better than some of those other teams below them, but who knows? So, yeah, keep talking. But anyway, that was a great win with that one. I'm not going to complain about Knicks fans and the Knicks that much more. I know I did that in like the last time that they played, but the Knicks fans and the Knicks get under my skin so much. So that was a good win. I like that win. The Nets played hard. They won by 2. They were shorthanded. They beat the arrogant Knicks. So then the big game comes in against the Pelicans, the return of Kevin Durant. Hallelujah. And, the game did not disappoint. Durant came in. He played only 17 minutes, but he was a perfect 5 for 5 from the field. He did have a lot of turnovers, and if there's anything right now that's kind of frustrating me with Kevin Durant, it's that he's turning the ball over too much. But once again, this is a guy that missed 23 games, so you can't get that upset about him being a little rusty when it comes to his court vision and forcing stuff. But the fact that he was 5 for 5 is just hysterical. The game was just a dominating performance by the Nets. They ended up winning by, 28 points. The Nets got to rest the starters at the end in the fourth quarter. They held Zion Williamson to under 20 points. And it was just a great win. And, it was just good to see Durant back out there because we haven't seen Durant play in 23 games. And just to see him be in the flow and didn't force anything, it was just very good. So that was a very good win for the Nets. Then they played they played the Lakers. Now, this game was ugly. This game to me was probably the most disappointing game of all the games. Look, no James Harden, we get it. But I really still felt that with Kyrie Irving and Kevin Durant and the rest of the Nets, that they would have been able to win this game. Because, I don't know. There's no LeBron James or Anthony Davis. No LeBron James, no Anthony Davis, no Kyle Kuzma. How did the Nets get blown out by the Lakers? It's inexcusable. And look, I know what a lot of people are going to be saying, the Nets are making their comeback before Kyrie Irving and Dennis Schroeder got ejected from the game. Yeah, but and Kevin Durant had a minutes restriction. I understand that. But the reality is that the Nets should have never been down by double digits in this game like they were. That should have never happened. This is the one thing that frustrates me more than anything else with this Nets team. They continually to play down to their opponents. And look, yes, when healthy, the Lakers are one of the best teams in the NBA. But without LeBron James, without Anthony Davis, there's no way that the Nets should be losing to them. No way. They made Dennis Schroeder look like a superstar. They let Andre Drummond completely bully them inside. And tell me something, Steve Nash. Tell me something. If there's any time to play DeAndre Jordan in a game, it is against Andre frickin' Drummond. Because the one thing Andre Drummond can do is bully you inside. It's what he's great at. He's a great offensive rebounder. He's a great defensive player, and he has capable post-game, but only post-game. If there's ever a time to play DeAndre Jordan, it's in that matchup. Where the hell's DeAndre Jordan? I'll tell you, 0 minutes on the bench. LaMarcus Aldridge got completely dominated, and there was no way Claxton was going to be able to deal with the strength of Andre Drummond, and that wasn't the reason why the Nets lost, but Drummond had 20 points and 12 rebounds and just completely bullied them inside. Look, I know I talk crap on DeAndre Jordan because he hasn't been as good as Claxton and obviously Aldridge and all this stuff, but I've said this before. The one thing that Jordan can do is he can still play good interior defense against strong bigs. He's a strong body. He's not useless. He has ability. And that's when he should have been playing. But for some reason, Steve Nash just let's just stick with this Aldridge-Claxton rotation. It's whatever. That game was just very disappointing. And like I said, I understand there's other circumstances out there, but you should not be losing to a shorthanded Lakers team like that. And he should not be blown out like they were. It was just a huge disappointment, and I was very frustrated with that loss. But then again, they came back and they had a great comeback win against the Timberwolves. Now, like I said, I wasn't going to talk a lot about that game either, but the reality is the game was very good. I unfortunately didn't have a chance to see a lot of it because I was working, but I had the game on in the background. I was able to see some of it, and that just looked unbelievable in that game. And so Nets ended up really blowing out the Timberwolves as they should. So everything just kind of like looks pretty good. Like the Nets are bouncing back, and I'm saying to myself, all right, cool. Here comes the marquee matchup, the 76ers game. And I'm like everyone else, I'm excited. And I'm hyped up. And I'm like, this is going to be it. Okay, no James Harden. Okay, no problem. No James Harden, no problem. And that was the other thing with that Timberwolves game. There was no, Kyrie because he was dealing with a family matter. And no LaMarcus Aldridge because he was dealing with what we later have found out was an irregular heartbeat. But at the time he was dealing with, a medical situation. So he was not playing either. And Durant and the guys dominated the Timberwolves. So, we're talking about that. But then comes the 76ers game. Now, because of what happened in Minnesota, the Nets-Minnesota game got delayed one game. So that all of a sudden made this a back-to-back. So I'm not surprised Kevin Durant was rested. I'm not. I mean, look, it was almost a guarantee it was going to happen. An unscheduled back-to-back? Yeah. Guy coming off a nagging hamstring injury in which he missed 23 games? Yeah. I get it. But let me just say this. This whole resting crap is getting out of control. It really is. Not just in basketball, but also in baseball. But we're not going to talk about baseball, but that's another thing. These are professional athletes. Their job is to play basketball or play baseball or play sports. They get paid millions to do it. Now, I am not saying to put your body through physical harm. I am not saying to do what Kevin Durant did 2 years ago when he ruptured his Achilles or tore his Achilles, coming back too soon when he clearly wasn't 100% with a calf injury and hurting himself worse. I am not saying that. But if you are 100% and your body feels 100% good, you gotta play. You gotta play. Especially a marquee matchup against the 76ers. But no, the analytics apparently say it's better to rest the body, which, by the way, show me the proof on that. Like, I think it was Michael Kay on the Michael Kay show was talking about it, and I couldn't agree with him more. Show me the proof where resting these players actually prevent them from getting hurt. The only way that matters is if, like I said, if there's a nagging injury or they're not 100%, absolutely then it makes sense. Because, yes, you can re-hurt yourself or make an injury worse. But if you are 100% and you just had been hurt a couple weeks prior, it just doesn't make sense to me. Show me the proof that helps these guys stay healthy. The only way it helps them is that it just removes a chance of them getting hurt by making them play a less game. Like, right, obviously the more games they play, the more opportunities they could get hurt. So that's the only way it happens. So don't tell me that, it's the second game of the back-to-back. We want to rest them. Just say something stupid like, this guy needs to be rested 1 every 3 games because we don't want to risk the chances of increasing his probability of him getting hurt by playing. So don't say things like that. It's just ridiculous. But once again, I was not surprised Durant didn't play. And, there was no Harden, obviously, a hamstring injury. No Chiozza because he apparently, he broke his hand in the Timberwolves game and he's going to be out for probably the rest of the year, which is a huge blow because he really was that third-string point guard that the Nets had. So no Chiozza, obviously no James Harden, no LaMarcus Aldridge still dealing with his health issues, no Kevin Durant, and for some freaking reason, no Blake Griffin. Why does Blake Griffin need to rest? Oh, he has knee problems. My God, the guy plays 15 minutes a game. Why does he need to rest? Is he secretly hurt too? What the hell? It's out of control. So no Blake Griffin either. So who the hell do the Nets have? They had Kyrie Irving. And the other guys, Jeff Green, Joe Harris, Landry Shamet, Claxton, DeAndre Jordan, who played well in that game. We're going to talk about that in a second. Oh, and the great Timothy Luwawu-Cabarrot. That guy needs to go. I haven't bashed him in a while, though he's been complete garbage for the last month. Like, he's got to go. I mean, I can't stand him anymore. But there was no way the Nets were going to win that game. There was no way. The Nets went out there. They kept it close throughout most of the game, but then everything just fell apart. I love the fact that they started DeAndre Jordan, and I really liked what I saw from him. What I was talking about with Andre Drummond, it seemed like Steve Nash said, okay, let's take that approach with Joel Embiid. Granted, yes, a lot of it had to do with the fact that no LaMarcus Aldridge and no Blake Griffin, so the Nets really didn't have a choice. But he certainly didn't need to start DeAndre Jordan, and he certainly didn't need to play him that much, except for the fact is I think Steve Nash said, this is the game plan. And you know what? It was working. DeAndre Jordan was playing very good interior defense with Joel Embiid. He was really frustrating him. The problem is, Joel Embiid is just that good where Joel Embiid kind of realized, you know what? My post game isn't really working out. But you know what I can do against DeAndre Jordan? I can beat him off the dribble, and I can beat him in the triple threat. And that's what he did. And that's why Embiid still managed to score 39 points, because he's like, all right, I'll just adapt to what you're doing. I'm going to shoot mid-range jump shots and threes and put the ball on the floor and get to the basket and get fouled. That's why Embiid is arguably going to be the MVP. He's obviously one of the leaders, for the MVP. And you see how great he is. But the truth is, I was very pleased with DeAndre Jordan. He had 14 rebounds. He had some nice energy. He looked spry. It was a good performance by him, as it should be. But once again, the Nets just couldn't get past the 76ers and how good they really were. And they found themselves down 22. And I was like everyone else. When Kyrie got taken out of the game, I'm like, this game's over. So I just left it in the background. I started washing dishes and vacuuming and, cleaning up my house, because that's what I do, because I never have time to do anything. So I just had the game in the background, and I'm listening. And I was like, 3 by Shamet, rebound by Alize Johnson, blah, blah. I'm like, what's going on? And I sit back down, and I see there was 4 minutes left. The Nets are only down by 10. And I'm like, wait a minute. What's going on here? And I keep watching the game, and all of a sudden, Joel Embiid and Ben Simmons are checking back in. I'm like, what? And didn't matter. I see Alize Johnson, and Nicholas Claxton double-teaming Embiid. They steal the ball, layup, this and that. And next you know, the Nets are only down 3 with like a minute and a half to go. And I'm thinking to myself, they're not going to win this game. Are they going to win this game? Are they going to win this game? No, they weren't going to win this game. And I knew deep down they weren't going to, especially since Steve Nash didn't put Kyrie back in. And I completely understand why. The same reason why Embiid and Ben Simmons didn't play well after they got put back in is that, they weren't engaged anymore. Kyrie was pulled. He wasn't engaged anymore. And also, I agree with what Steve Nash said. You want to reward the guys that were out there, especially Alize Johnson, who just, I love this guy. And I'm so glad the Nets are, signed him for the rest of this year and gave him a non-guaranteed contract for next year. He deserves that contract. And I hope that there's a way that when the Nets are fully healthy, that he can still be in the rotation, because I think he brings this energy and toughness, this grit and grind that the Nets need. Him and Bruce Brown are the energy tough guys. Like, I love what they bring to the table, and I just hope he plays more. I really do. But it was just a great comeback. The Nets were down by 22. They ended up only losing by 6, cut the lead to 3. And it was Luwawu-Cabarrot, who, like I said, but hey, he made a couple shots. Landry Shamet, who I'm really starting to like. Bruce Brown, who we already know he's got great energy. Claxton, we all know I love him. And Alize Johnson. And those guys just played so much harder. And look, if there's such a thing as a good loss or a moral victory, that's the definition of it. Because let me say this. I think the Nets are in the 76ers' heads now. Because the Nets went into this game shorthanded anyway, with just Kyrie in the game. And they kept the game close. And once the game looked like it was over, the Nets battled back with Kyrie on the bench. Who was the best player out there for the Nets when they came back in that game? Landry Shamet? Alize Johnson? Probably. So, like, if that doesn't demoralize a team, that they have to put their starters back in, and even when the starters came back in, the Nets still managed to battle back. It's almost like you're saying to the 76ers, you know how we didn't really care about winning this game? Because that's the truth. The Nets didn't care about winning that game. They care more about health in the playoffs than beating the 76ers and having the number 1 seed. We can see that. So the Nets are saying to the 76ers, you see how we don't really care about this game? How we kind of gave it to you? Yeah. You couldn't even take it from us. You couldn't even do what you were supposed to do easily because, and you couldn't even do it against our best player who we pulled. You did it against our scrubs. Our scrubs, which I don't think any of them, other than Luwawu-Cabarrot, are scrubs, because I love all those guys. You couldn't even do it against our bench team. What are you going to do when we're fully healthy and we got Kevin Durant, James Harden, and Kyrie Irving staring you in the eyes? Okay, Joel, go ahead, drop your 40 points. What else you guys got? And that, I think, is the reality of it. I mean, I've never felt so good about a loss. I really do believe that if this Nets team stays healthy, it don't matter if Joel Embiid drops 40 points or 45 points. I don't think it's going to be enough because that's all the 76ers are going to be able to do. Because Ben Simmons, he's a good defensive player, but I don't really ever think he's that great of an offensive player. He has post moves. He has the ability to get to the basket, but I have never been sold on Ben Simmons' offense. Tobias Harris is very good, but I think he's inconsistent. And the rest of those guys could have moments of playing well, but I don't think they're nearly at the level that Durant, Harden, and Kyrie are. And then you, once again, sprinkle in Joe Harris and Jeff Green, the way he's playing, and Nicholas Claxton with his energy, and Blake Griffin, who's rejuvenated. I'm sorry, I'm not sweating it. I'm not worrying too much about this loss to the 76ers. And I think I think the Nets are in their heads. I really do. So overall, that's it. Those are the 6 games. And Nets went 3-3. I would say that's a disappointment, but when you think about the injuries that they dealt with and what was going on, then hey, you know what? I'll take it. But yeah. So that was basically what we saw from the last week and a half from the Nets. And then, like I said, the very upsetting news about LaMarcus Aldridge. I'm going to touch upon that now before I wrap up this video. The fact that this happened to him, and he's been dealing with heart condition his whole life. He's had issues with irregular heartbeats throughout his career, and I didn't even know that until I did some research. But apparently, he had a major scare after that Lakers game, and it was something like he had never experienced before, he said. And he went to the doctor, and he has a heart condition. And look, I completely understand it, LaMarcus. I think it's the right decision. I mean, is it very disappointing for the Nets and for the Nets fans? Yes. But you got to understand that at the end of the day, there's bigger things than sports. There's bigger things than basketball. Could LaMarcus Aldridge play through this if he had, medication and medical treatment? Possibly. I mean, we don't really know exactly what's wrong with him. It's something that caused, a irregular heartbeat, and there's a number of things that can cause that. So you can't, speculate too much. But I think when someone says that they're walking away from the game and they're retiring because of health purposes, because they want to be able to see their children grow up or grow old with their wife or husband or significant other, I don't have a problem with it. And so, like everyone's been very supportive. I say to LaMarcus Aldridge, thank you so much. You might have only been with the Nets for a couple weeks, but I've talked about it before. LaMarcus Aldridge was one of my favorite players before. He was one of my favorite players who wasn't a Net. I always liked his game. I always liked who he was. So it's very disappointing and upsetting to see him be put in this situation and retire. But LaMarcus, a NetsBoy salute to you, hoping the best for your health and your family and the rest of your life. Because, look, he's been in the league 15 years. It's a shame that, he's not going to be able to compete for a championship like he wanted to. But, hey, some things are bigger in this world. So, good luck to you, LaMarcus. So, it's a very upsetting situation. But, look, this is what DeAndre Jordan now has to step up. DeAndre Jordan was out of the rotation. He's going to be back in the rotation. I think there's a lot of questions of what the Nets are going to do. I don't know if there's any move they could make. It's after the buyout deadline, so they can't really get a player in the buyout market. The only thing that they could do is they could sign a G League player or they could sign a free agent. And I looked this up because I was curious. The Nets can sign a free agent who has not played for any other team, and they will be eligible for the postseason. That's how it works. If a player like Isaiah Thomas, who signed a 10-day contract and then he was let go, he cannot sign with the Nets, as I don't think he can, and be active for the playoffs because, well, maybe he can if it's a 10-day contract. I don't know all the rules to it, but I know a player can't be, released at this point and then signed and be eligible for the playoff roster. But the Nets could get a player who's been a free agent, who hasn't been on any team. But the reality is there's no one good out there. I mean, we're talking maybe Greg Monroe is probably the best player available, which I wouldn't be against Greg Monroe, another big body that you could throw out against, Joel Embiid or against, or Andre Drummond if the Nets play the Lakers. I mean, maybe. Then there's like Tyson Chandler. No, I don't know. There's really no good bigs left. So I think the Nets are just going to have to either sign a G League player and promote him or give Reggie Perry more opportunity to be like a third-string big. Or what I think they're just going to do is stick with the Claxton, DeAndre Jordan big rotation and go to Blake Griffin in the small ball lineup. With I think that's what the Nets are going to do. And it makes a lot of sense. So we'll see. We'll see what happens. But, yeah, so there you have it. I got to wrap up this episode. We're way too long. Just like I said, a lot to talk about. I thank you all for staying with me. If you started this episode from the beginning and you're here at the end, let me know what you guys think about everything. The stretch of games that they had, the Knicks game, the Lakers game, the 76ers game, what you see from Kevin Durant, the signing of Alize Johnson for the rest of the year, the upset news about LaMarcus Aldridge. If you think the Nets should get anyone else, the Luwawu-Cabarrot being a piece of crap, all this stuff. Let me know what you guys think. There's just a lot to talk about. The Chioza injury. Oh, the fact that you think players should be resting. Oh, there's so much that I talked about in this episode. That's why it's nearing 30 minutes. Let me know what you guys think. Shut up, NetsBoy, end the episode. And until then, I'm not even going to talk about the next couple games for the Nets because I don't have the time to do it. Just let's see what happens. Until the next time. This is NetsBoy. Signing off.